We'll now open the Revere License Commission meeting. First order of business is Neil DeRosa doing business as Brewin Café. Please come up, state your name and address for the record, please. Great. And can you give us a little bit of a background on what you're planning to do and what your background experience is? Turn your microphone on, sorry.
Over here, we plan to put a large amount of baked goods, different selection of coffees, soup, salads, light lunch type of stuff.
Great. And what are your hours planning to be?
6 a.m. to around possibly 8 p.m.
Okay. And the seating capacity?
14 to 18, I believe.
Okay. I guess you put down 15 here.
Okay, that might be right, 15.
Okay, 15.
What was it approved for?
What?
The seating, what was the seating?
And the application is 15. It looks like 15.
Was it?
Yeah. According to my contact lenses. Okay. I don't have any questions.
Well, the inspectional services approved everything?
Yes, they did.
I have no questions. Make a motion?
Um,
No, sorry.
I'll second the motion.
Well, you didn't make a motion yet.
I'll make a
Oh,
motion.
I thought you were going to ask some questions.
Sorry.
Sorry, Louise.
That's all right. All right, you can make your motion.
So I'm
Yep.
gonna make a motion to approve the Brewin Café for 15 seats.
Let me, before you go on to do that, are there any proponents that want to speak on behalf of this establishment? Hearing and seeing none. Are there any opponents? Hearing and seeing none. Now you can make
Okay,
your
so I'll
motion.
make a motion to approve Brewin Café for a common victual license
Great.
for 15 seats.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Good luck.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Just continue. Yes.
What is it? Oh,
But,
yeah, it's, great. Item number 2 is 388 Broadway LLC doing business as Volare's. This is a hearing concerning possible violations of licensing laws and regulations relating to the control of premises and service to intoxicated patrons. This is a continuation from September, our September meeting. And can you give us an update as to where you are? And before we do that, Lieutenant Randall, can you give us an update on whether there's been any reports?
As far as the logs, there haven't been any unusual incidents since the last meeting, and the detail has been hired on a regular basis.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the commission?
do you think that's why the incidents have flared down because of the detail?
We've had the detail there, historically for how long it's been, so I don't know that that is exactly a great indicator of whether or not things are going to happen, but
What nights do you have the detail?
Friday and Saturday.
Just Friday and Saturday? Correct. And we always had Friday and Saturday? I thought there was a time where Saturday wasn't,
No, ma'am, it's always been Friday and Saturday.
we've always had.
And then we hired the third security. That's what we had discussed in our previous meeting, that we would bring in a third person. So we brought in a third person to help us with the door on Friday and Saturday nights. And we do not allow anyone to come in after 12:30. This is what the board had recommended, and that's exactly what we did. And so, yes, we saw a significant change, and we're happy.
Okay, so you did hire one more security?
We did, correct.
So that's made the difference in the 12:30 closing?
The combination, I think, has helped us, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
So since the last hearing, were there any additional steps that you implemented to control the crowds? Just to refresh our memories here.
Besides well, we spoke, we had a meeting with all the employees, we went over the tip certification, we went over the overpouring, and then no other than, we had we have a dress code, and then again, the no admittance after 12:30, and then our third guy, that's basically what we did.
What about I mentioned last time about if a patron were to leave, maybe like.
Right,
after
they're
10,
not
they're
allowed back in, that's correct, yes.
Okay. I have no more questions.
Right, I don't have any questions. I would, the only comments that I do have is that I would continue to do what you're doing, recognize that you're still sort of in a probation period. If there are any issues within that period of time, we'll have you back here, and you could be subject to sanctions or loss of hours.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Good luck.
Item number 3 is Circle Auto Gallery, 400 Beach Street. Please state your name and address for the record. This is a hearing into violations of license conditions, including exceeding the allowed number of cars for sale, lying to investigating police officer, and fraudulently altering license.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Attorney Lawrence Simeone, and I represent Circle Auto Gallery and its manager, Kelly Schmeiske. Judge, and looking at the alleged violations of misrepresentation and the number of cars on the license and false licensing on a wall, the thing that the commission, I would ask the commission to look at in this particular case is that my client is a woman-owned business. She herself has been in the automobile industry for a very long time, notwithstanding her age. It is true that on September 27th, around 11:30 a.m., my client met the officer and was asked about parking issues as stated in your notice, and that she resolved those issues immediately, and then at some point the officer came back relative to the issue of the number of cars and saw what can only be described as a old 2013 license with the inappropriate number on them of 20 cars. He confronted my client. I believe my client told him that that was not the correct amount, and that in fact he asked for her license for 2016. I don't think she denied any of the allegations, and nor do we deny any of the allegations before you today, that she in fact was at least placing in a conspicuous place an old 2013 license with 20 vehicles on it. Okay. I will tell you that I would ask you to look at her as in the totality of her career in licensing holding in this community. She has worked, for, like I said, in the auto industry for a very long time. She worked for Toyota in Danvers from 2008 up to 2008, and she's also worked in Somerville from 2008 to 2012. 2012, she became an owner for the very first time, and I provided you a copy of the Better Business Bureau records, which establish that she is a AAA rated business with no complaints. I looked at the Revere police report records, and there's nothing in there, with the exception of the report filed by Lieutenant Randall, that indicate any other problems with her and the business of selling vehicles. I will tell you that she told me, and I believe it's a credible statement, that in this business, there are people who are competitive and they try to cause trouble for one another. And every once in a while, if they think they're selling too many cars or putting too many cars on the lot, they kind of report on one another, and it becomes very difficult. Even if you looked at the police report, People have come in her place and stolen stuff right out of the office, and so it's a difficult business. And I asked her why she left this 2013 license, and it was on a shelf in front of a pitcher. The officer was looking at it, and he finally found it behind the pitcher, and I believe he still has it to this day. She says to me she uses it as a decoy. Essentially, she doesn't use the word decoy, that's a word I used, but a decoy, so if one of these competitors or one of these people that she knows in the industry are coming in and asking, how many cars you have and so forth, she fends them off by saying, well, yeah, I have this license, and she whips it out when she has to, and she puts it back, okay? Again, she's not contesting the allegations made by Lieutenant Randall in his police report and notified to this commission. But I would ask you to look at her record in its totality and consider this a misstep and not revoke her license, but maybe consider some lesser fine or penalty that's more in line with the incident.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
The only thing additional I have, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of things. I gave Maggie the Better Business Bureau.
Yes, we do. My client has a pretty good record in the business community, notwithstanding the one incident here with Officer Randall.
So how many years has she been at that location?
She's been there since, I believe, the midway through 2012.
4 years or so?
So she's
been
the 2013 license was her license.
And how long has she been operating under the fictitious 20?
I would probably think that, without asking her,
From day
that
one.
I think she's been using that decoy since 2013.
Okay.
But Counselor, can you tell us how many cars she's actually had on there while
She's-
she's displaying this?
Yeah, well, I'll go with Attorney
using-
Randall's
well, yes, I do wanna hear-
findings, and I believe he found 18 the day he was there.
18. Because I would like to hear from Lieutenant Randall, only because I would like to see how cooperative she was when Lieutenant Randall went for the inspection.
Well, the first time I went down about the parking issue, I said, well, she explained to me that parking control had gone down there to some complaints about customer cars parked, out towards the circle and interfering with traffic, and she explained that she had corrected that, and I really had no problem with that. And I said, while I'm here, let me do a car count on the number of cars you have.
Excuse me. Sorry about that.
And so I counted 18 cars, and I saw the license on the wall for 20, and I saw that it was a 2013, so I asked her for her current license. She opened a book in her desk and showed me a current license, a photocopy, a white photocopy, not the blue original of a current license, that also said 20 cars. I, at the time, didn't know off the top of my head how many her license was for, so I took her at her word there that it was 20. And I told Maggie, the parking situation has been corrected, and she has a license for 20, and there are only 18. And then Maggie informed me, I believe the license is 10. I'll have to double check on that. And when she checked on it, it was 10. And that's what caused me to go back the second time.
Did your client recognize that she was giving the 20 and not the 10?
I think she knows that she was given 10.
No, I'm saying
Yeah.
in terms of the document that she gave to Lieutenant Randall.
I'm not aware that she gave a document to Lieutenant Randall. I don't think it's in the police report. I only know that from what I've gleaned.
No, she didn't give me anything. She just showed me in a book on the desk.
Yeah.
What the council likes to call a decoy,
Decoy.
decoy.
Yeah,
I would call it a forgery, but,
we can do that.
we don't have to mince words there.
So I'd ask, as I have, okay? Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Well, I'm just, I don't understand why you did that. I mean, what would make you do something like that? You have other car dealers, you've got great ratings. What would make you do something like that? I'm just a little perplexed as to your actions.
You're asking
Well, through council, I mean, you know, she has 10 cars, she knows that. Obviously, there were 18 cars
Yep.
when he went down there, so why, I'm just confused as to why she would do this, knowing she only had 10.
I would
license
probably
for
think it's the
10.
same reason that every Class 2 license holder has in this community, that if they can throw an extra few cars on for a few minutes and make an extra sale, they do it. If they can get away with it, and whatever. So I don't think there's anything honorable about putting extra cars on it. I think it's just a competitive thing. They're trying to make money. And this particular site, I know has had its problems. It was 20 years ago, but got scaled back by the commission, you know.
I'm just surprised. I mean, I'm reading this, and obviously, you run good businesses elsewhere, and where you've worked, you haven't had any problems. I'm just surprised that you come to Revere and we end up changing the license.
Oh, she can speak, but you're asking me if I want to speak.
We'll let her speak.
If you want to go
Yeah,
through
I'll-
the council.
I want to hear from her.
Sure.
She sounds like looks like a sweet girl. I don't know what you're in this business for. I don't know.
It's tough business for her. So when he came down, everything says right, but I did not give him a 2017 license with 20 cars. The question is, you want to know why? Okay, so my ex-part. Oh. Sure.
So just from your own words, why did you, doctor about the license? What was the rationale?
Okay, my ex-partner, all right, so I moved out from, I had a partnership in Somerville for 4 years. So, he didn't want to walk the way I did, so I moved to Revere. But before I did that, I had to split, and he wasn't up happy. So he got a new partner, he lives 2 blocks from the dealership, and he always drives by, and he already came over to my office one time. Oh, I tried to rent this place, there was only 10 cars, how you doing? So he lives 2 blocks from me. Because of that main reason, I said, no, I got 20 cars, and I showed him, and I put in the license 2013. And I showed the video to him, it was behind the picture frame, and it shows he was looking at it, and he took it off. It wasn't a 2017. So when he asked me, how many cars can you say? I'm not sure, I think it's 20. But main reason, I did not do it just because to fool him, but because I have people that, I'm a girl and I'm doing better than 2 men that speak English, so do you think they're happy? No, they're not. So unfortunately, I did it for them, and I made myself in a big problem right now. And I try to do everybody, I don't want nobody, I pay all the bills with everybody, the city, never had any problem. I think not even the people that walk on the sidewalk complained, because when sometimes customer park on the sidewalk, I have them move right away. So 4.5 years, no problems with people walking on the street, or, no problems, people calling that, okay, Kelly did something. My customers don't call the police because I try to do everything 100%.
I understand all that, because a lot of stuff leads up to a final decision.
Yes.
But you understand
Yes,
you did something wrong, correct?
exactly, I do.
That's what I want to hear.
So you recognize that you have 10 vehicles and you're going to have 10 vehicles on the lot?
Exactly, I do. And even when I rented the business, they did not have a license, so I rented it. I was told I could do 20, and that's why I paid $5,500 of rent. So I would never rent it for 10. And they said, oh, are we gonna get it because them? And so sometimes I have 14, sometimes I have 15, but I never have a lot of cars, and I try. I even told I rent a place over here, so when I have a lot of cars, I move because I don't want no problems. It's a very traffic location, so a lot of accidents happen, so you don't want to get in trouble. And I put the license from 2013 behind a picture frame, and he didn't come in mainly to do count the cars, but to see the cars on sidewalk. And he wasn't really, okay, let me see the license, and I did lie to him. I said, I'm not sure, I think it's 20. So when he came back, he saw I got him the 10 cars, 17, but he saw the 13 on the wall.
First, I think you all walks away an apology,
Yes, I do.
so we're standing over there.
I do both for the city, and yeah, he said he was very upset with me, and I said I'm sorry, but he said, Kelly, right now I'm very upset. There's nothing I can do with you right now. I'm very upset, and I did make a mistake, and I apologize, and I've learned my lessons. I told him, it's like I even told my husband, I don't want to do this business anymore. It's a rough business for a girl. But, I got stressed out when he came in, and he said, I told him, I never had any problem with the city hall. He said, oh, I guess it changed. So now you guys going to look at me a different eye. And I understand. And I told him, listen,
Well, I think they're very fair. I don't think he's gonna look
No,
at you
yes,
that
he
way.
wasn't,
He's
he
out
was just
there,
doing his job.
and
so-
he's just doing his job. We may not be out there, but the officers
know.
are out there checking.
And he said to me, can you
So
move them
in
in an
the-
hour? And I say, I'll do it right now, sir, so I did what I
So,
did.
so in the future, how many cars are you gonna have on the lot?
Right now, we have 10 since the day he left.
10, you can't have even
Yeah,
11.
I know.
It's
That's-
10 cars.
So that's what we have right now, 10, and I talked to the landlord, listen, we're gonna see what they tell us. You know, I already got a place so I can put the cars every time we get a trade-in and we move it. I even told him it's right here on the Broadway, it's a fenced yard, so when I get trade-in or something, I can move right away. He said, that's good move. So since the time he left there, we have, no cars on sidewalks, no extra cars.
Well, I understand, you know, I believe you're sincere, and I like that you come up here and are being truthful about it. Most people will try to, you know, sway one way or the other why they had the 17 cars, but obviously, you know you did wrong. It was forgery or, you know, changing the license. But I do think you're sincere, I have to say. I think that you've learned your lesson. And I would hope that, being in the business, obviously you've been in it for a long time, you know you cannot do that. You just can't change a license. And I'm sure if it were to happen again, you probably would lose the license. The license wouldn't be there any longer. So that's all I've got to say. It's really an unfortunate situation. I'm surprised that someone would do that. This, I think, is a first for me. I've never heard of it. But I do believe you're sincere, and that I would hope you wouldn't do it again because your license is in jeopardy. That's all I have to say.
So I would suggest, I think what I'll do is I'll make a motion that, you know, we'll table this, so that if this happens again, we'll have you back here and you'll be subject to some type of either revocation of the license or some other penalty.
Okay?
Thank
I'll
you.
second that motion. Is that in the form of a
Yeah,
motion?
that is a, in a form of
Okay.
a motion.
I'll second that
All in
motion.
favor, say
Aye.
Great, thank you. Item number 4 is Kenneth G. LaFauci, doing business as Brothers Auto Body. This is a hearing into state police reports of using Class II used car dealer license to purchase cars at auction for unlicensed purchase and sale of salvage cars. I recognize you're representing them. I'm going to have the troopers come up and state their position on this. Please state your name and barracks, please.
I would like to, at this time, just disclose that several years ago, I have bought a car from Mr. LaFauci. So I just want to disclose that. If anybody has a problem with it, I, you know, would be more than glad to step down. But I have no gain one way or the other with this incident that happened.
Can you, I'm sorry, please state your name.
Sure, good afternoon. My name is Dana Atkinson. I'm a trooper with the Massachusetts State Police assigned to the Salvage Title Inspection Unit.
Great.
Good afternoon, Trooper Matt Heafy, Mass State Police Salvage Title Section Unit.
Great, thank you, guys. Can you give us some background on why you're here and the problems that you've been experiencing?
Certainly. So, to start off, sir, this is an advent of an issue that came to light in Lawrence, Massachusetts earlier this year. The Lawrence Licensing Commission was clamping down on Class II used car dealers that were operating as Class III dealers so far as they were dismantling motor vehicles, using those parts to reconstruct other motor vehicles. It was brought to the attention of the Salvage Title Section in concert with the Lawrence Licensing Commission. Troopers from the Vehicle Services Section, also assigned to the Massachusetts State Police, did an extensive investigation into the goings-on in the city of Lawrence. The ultimate decision from the city of Lawrence and the licensing board was that these Class II dealers who were purchasing vehicles at auction for the sole purpose of dismantling them and taking those parts from those motor vehicles, using them to construct or reconstruct total loss salvage motor vehicles was in violation of their Class II license. That's where a lot of this stemmed from. So with that decision in hand from the Lawrence Licensing Commission, troopers assigned a salvage title in the Northeast. We operate in Revere 2 days a week, and we operate out of Haverhill 3 days a week. So the dealers that were coming into those two sites started to get more closer scrutiny with Class 2 and Class 3 licensed dealers. So that when this was occurring, we would then contact the local cities and towns and ask for clarification as to their Class 2 and Class 3 status and what the licensing boards were, what their decision would be. I'd say approximately 90 to 95% of the towns that we have contacted thus far have concurred with the City of Lawrence Licensing Commission's decision that purchasing a vehicle outside of Class 2 for the sole purpose of dismantling and reconstructing other vehicles was outside of the Class 2 license. With that said, Mr. LaFauci has been bringing in motor vehicles under the same guise where he would purchase a vehicle from his company that he was using for the sole purpose of dismantling it and reconstructing other motor vehicles and then submitting those for salvage inspection. Trooper Heafy was in contact with Lieutenant Randall relative to that. An opinion we got from the Registry of Motor Vehicles when we asked for clarification on the license was to do exactly as we did in this case. We were to take the vehicle in. The vehicle in question was inspected by me on the day in question. My captain instructed me to go ahead with the inspection, continue with it, and don't reject it for this reason, but in fact to take a copy of the paperwork and submit it to the City of Revere for a determination of the potential violation. So that has brought us to this point where we are today. On the date in question, again, I believe you have the paperwork from that inspection. That was one instance thus far. However, there have been numerous ones, but since that ruling and the decision from my supervisor was one that brings us here today.
Great, thank you.
Yes, I believe it initially started, I think, when I spoke to Maggie back in March, when I contacted the city, and I had spoke to Mr. LaFauci about that back in March over a vehicle, and he was going to follow up with the city. We never got a ruling or anything from the city pursuant to our conversation that I had with, I believe you're Maggie, correct?
That's correct.
No, I'm not.
Maggie, you're Maggie.
She's
Oh,
the
you're Maggie.
secretary.
And according to that, and looking at the statute, it's pretty cut and dry in the statute. If you look at the Class 2, Class 3, it specifically mentions, I'm not sure if the City of Revere, in the small print at the bottom, Class 3, as soon as you dismantle a car, whether you take a bumper, an airbag, or any part off that car, what we do with the registry is we stamp that title parts only. So now that vehicle can never be reconstructed, it can never be rebuilt. It becomes a junk vehicle. So the reason why I believe that the registry of the statute exists is so Class 2 dealers don't start turning into junkyards where they have junk vehicles on their lots. They're supposed to, get rid of it, or they're not in the business of junk vehicles. That's why Class 3, there's very few and far between compared to the Class 2, and they have a higher bond, a higher licensing fee, and they're more heavily scrutinized than the majority of the Class 2. So I think that's initially what we started, and then I was on a vacation day when Trooper Atkinson had his incident about a month or two ago.
So are you saying if someone's building a car, they can't buy the whole, as you would call it, junk car? How do they get parts to build a car? Do you just have, can you buy a part?
There's numerous ways. If a Class 2 dealer were to buy a salvage vehicle at auction that can be rebuilt, it's called what's salvage rebuildable. Now, these vehicles, they can buy aftermarket parts. They can go to a salvage yard and buy used parts. That's how the majority of them are reconstructing these vehicles, or the parts they're able to repair. A lot of times insurance companies, if you were to get into an accident with your car and the insurance company says, okay, it's not worth it to fix it, it's $20,000 in damage, the car's only worth $25,000, they'll total loss of the vehicle. What happens is these insurance companies send these salvage vehicles to auction when they go to auction, used car dealers, Class 2 and Class 3, will bid on these cars. They'll purchase these cars to fix them, and they usually, from what I've seen with the paperwork, they make their money by putting aftermarket parts on, or they'll buy used parts from a salvage yard. You know, a perfect example would be like a flood car that came from Louisiana. It's got no damage on it. Now, say you had a car that was in a front-end crash and completely destroyed. So what they do is they take that flood car and say, okay, the salvage yard would take it, take the parts off, the parts are still good, just the electronics in the car are no good due to the flood, and they'll reconstruct it that way, and it's at a reduced rate. Or you could buy aftermarket parts from, you know, China or somewhere, or a second, third-hand company, excuse me, that makes the parts for these vehicles, and they reconstruct them. Now, what some Class 2 dealers were doing is they were operating outside the scope of their dealer's license, and they were purchasing salvage cars at auction, and instead of rebuilding them, they were stripping them, basically becoming a chop shop where you're ripping the parts off the car. Now, once they do that, that becomes a junk vehicle. So now, that's why specifically, if you were to look at, I believe it's Chapter 140, Section 58, if you were to look at the statute verbatim, it specifically says dismantling motor vehicles. Since I've been doing this, I've been state police 14 years, I've been a police officer for 19 years, I'm probably about a year and a half in this unit. Yeah, I've been learning as I'm going, and what I've come across is, when I come across this, since we started with the city of Lawrence, I've probably been in contact with dozens of municipalities from Springfield, Boston, Lowell, Tewksbury, Springfield. Every licensing committee, every city clerk that I speak to has said, no, they cannot have junk cars in their lots. That's why, you know, normally we hear. The overwhelming majority of the Class 2 dealers, they understand this. They may change their business because I think for years they were going unchecked. It never became an issue. Now that it's been brought to our attention at the salvage inspection process, we forward it to the municipalities for their you know, whatever they do, because the licensing is through the municipality, so.
So when they go to these auctions, do they have auctions like for those that have a Class 2 license, and then an auction for those that have a Class 3 license?
I
Because you
believe
said
they need a dealer's license from what I've looked at, speaking to Copart and IAA, which are some of the major car auctions that all the insurance companies, or the majority, not all, will send them to these auctions. And you need a dealer's license. You or I, as an individual, could not buy a salvage
Right.
vehicle. You'd have
But I'm
to
just
have a
saying,
dealer's license.
you said that there's Class 2 dealers there and Class 3 dealers there.
Yes.
So if they're auctioning this car off, do they have just like Class 2 licenses today auctioned?
I
or
do not
Class
believe so. I
3?
can't speak for the auctions. I'm not sure what their daily operations. I've never actually been at their auction sites to see their inner workings. The interaction I have is via phone or email when we come across, you know, through my day-to-day operations at the unit that we're in.
So let me understand this. So you don't have a problem with them buying the car, they just can't bring it to the body shop and use it for parts?
The main issue hasn't been them buying a salvage car to fix it, because a lot of car dealerships have body shops, they have dealer repair plates, because, you know, one-stop shopping, that, you know, they just, whatever they do on their business end. The issue is when they buy cars now for parts, they're stripping that car, so now they're in the realm of Class 3. Because you need a Class 3 license to dismantle, to sell those parts.
Right.
What they're doing is, once you strip that, you're actually transferring that part to another part. And the reason why state police are involved in this process is, it's twofold. We're here, compliance, making sure the vehicles are reconstructed, but we're primarily here to make sure stolen parts aren't going on these cars.
Right.
So that's why it gives accountability in the used car industry to where the parts actually come from. And then, you know, we have no way of, you know, double checking, okay, you have a parts vehicle. It might not even be on the lot. It could have been scrapped years ago. You wouldn't know. They're coming in with a title that's stamped parts only, so.
And,
that's the issue.
and although this is one, since you've got clarification on the license, have you both encountered this before at this establishment?
Yes.
With this, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Just to clarify, sir, on the Class 3, as far as the Lawrence complaint was concerned, some of the Class 3s went to the city of Lawrence and said, listen, we know these guys are operating outside of their Class 2. you know, we pay a lot of money to get a Class 3, and they're not, like Trooper Heaphy said, they're not, as you're aware, they're very few and far between. So then Lawrence took the movement on that because they went around and saw the inspections and saw the vehicles in the yards that weren't Class 3s, that were technically operating as a junkyard. So just so you have an understanding as to where this all started from and how it's come to this point at this point in time.
Right, thank you.
I have no other questions.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Please state your name again for the address and record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, my name is Attorney Lawrence Simeone. I represent the license holder Kenneth LaFauci, DBA Brothers Auto. I provided you my legal memorandum on this issue, along with a letter from MassDOT addressing this issue. I also have with me today former Trooper Feldman and former Trooper Giles, who actually worked in this area of the title inspection unit, which is authorized under Chapter 90D. And the limited jurisdiction of this unit is to review applications submitted for salvage titles, and I think the focus is the criminal sale of parts, illegal parts. The application, as I noted in my memo, is quite a lot of information, but this particular gentleman has been in business for 30 years in the city. And for 30 years, he's had a special garage license, which is an auto body license, and he's had a Class 2 license. And under that Class 2 license, he has purchased salvage vehicles, he has reconstructed motor vehicles, and sold them under the auspices of his Class 2 license, Chapter 140, the salvage title law, Chapter 90D, and MassDOT, which is the governing body for which the state troopers work under. Under Chapter 90D, Section 20, it clearly states that all dealers under Chapter 140 are relieved of the requirement to provide inspection reports, which is the requirement of an individual insurance company or an individual who decides to keep the vehicle. I point to you Chapter 90D, Section 20, that states whenever an insurer acquires an ownership of a vehicle which has been determined to be a total loss, and I have the definition of a total loss in there in the memo with you, it decides to, the total loss, it requires that within 10 days of the date of ownership to surrender the title, certificate of title, to the Registry of Motor Vehicles and apply for a salvage title license, a salvage title. And that's what this unit actually does. It looks at those applications for salvage titles. Under Chapter 90D, Section 20B, it says if an owner of a vehicle receives a total loss settlement from an insurer and retains possession and ownership of it, he is required within 10 days of the settlement to surrender the certificate of title to the registrar and again apply for a salvage title. And there are certain vehicles for which salvage title is not required. And when they filed this application for salvage title, these insurers and owners, the application must be submitted to the inspection unit of the Massachusetts State Police, and the application must be accompanied by an outstanding salvage title, the bill of sale for all major parts used to restore the vehicle, an affidavit attesting to the authenticity of the identification parts, salvage title documents, required inspection fees. If the result of the inspections are satisfied and the documents are in order, the registry will issue a new certificate containing notation reconstructed on it.
Counsel, quick question for you.
Yeah.
So so two questions, actually. So the first one on chapter 90, where within that statute does it refer to class 2?
Okay?
And then
Yeah.
also,
Go ahead.
and then also, if in fact there is a notification to the state police, did your client do that?
What happened here is that, what I'm saying to you is the title law requires insurers and owners to go through this process of application, for which the unit that the troopers work for review, okay? In this particular statute, if you look, and I've highlighted the area, it says that,
That's on page 4?
that is on page 4, that is correct. It says the statute allows Chapter 140 dealers to file an assignment upon the transfer of a reconstructed vehicle in accordance with 90D 20C. 90D 20C, paragraph B, starts off by saying, underlined, except for dealers licensed under the provisions of 59 of Chapter 140, the transferee of a vehicle for which a salvage title has been issued under this chapter and under the laws of another state, within 10 days after receiving delivery of the total loss, shall apply for a new salvage title on the form prescribed by the registrar. But as you can see, it says in paragraph B, it says, except for dealers, not just Class 2 dealers, all dealers under the provisions of Chapter 140. It then goes on to say in subparagraph C that if a dealer licensed under the provisions of Section 59 of Chapter 140 is a transferee of a vehicle for which a salvage title has been issued, he need not apply for a new salvage title, but upon transferring the vehicle, shall execute only an assignment to the transferee in a space provided for such dealer assignments on the title on such form as the registrar prescribes. The fact that this particular statute clearly establishes the right of 140 dealers, okay, not just Class 2, but all 140 dealers, to become a transferee, someone who takes in the vehicle, and a transferor recognizes the right of a Class 2 license holder to deal with these motor vehicles. Now, when you look at Chapter 140, and I provided you the definition of a Class 2 license, you can see that it's extremely sparse. It doesn't address that issue. But it doesn't preclude the use by a Class 2 license holder to purchase salvage vehicles, repair them, and then sell them. It does not exclude that.
But we're not doing that in this case. What we're doing is we're using them for salvage parts and then using them in another vehicle.
That's correct, but it doesn't preclude that. If you look at Chapter 140, Section 58, you see that there's no prohibition against doing that. It says a person whose principal business is buying or selling of secondhand motor vehicles, a person who purchases and displays secondhand motor vehicles for resale in retail transactions, and any other person who displays secondhand motor vehicles not owned by him pursuant to an agreement which he receives compensation. So there's no preclusion precluding a 140 dealer, any dealer that's Class 1, 2, and 3, from being the owner and transferee of a salvaged vehicle. So when you take that particular reference, one, the fact that they can own a salvage vehicle, they can sell or transfer a salvage vehicle, these 140 dealers, and the fact that the Class 2 license, as defined, doesn't prohibit remodeling, selling of Class 2 cars, which originally were a salvage vehicle, supports the contention of the letter written by MassDOT, which is attached to your package. This letter is issued September 30th, 2016. It's directed to this honorable commission, and it's signed by Antonio M. DeSisto, the title review officer for MassDOT. He says, upon review of the Massachusetts General Laws 140, Section 58, It was determined that a Class 2 dealer is not excluded from reconstructing motor vehicles and selling the same.
But that's not the same as dismantling the vehicle and using it as parts for other vehicles. This only addresses reconstructing of motor vehicles.
It does not say that they can't either. So he's allowed to take vehicles, he can buy two of the same vehicles, he can reconstruct one vehicle using the parts. What he can't do is sell the parts and keep junk cars on the premises. And that's what the troopers just said to you.
So how is he doing that?
He's dismantling, takes the parts off, and then removes the remnants of the body, and he sells those and/or transfer those for donations and so forth.
So this
He doesn't operate a junkyard.
Right, but the way this reads is upon review of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 14058, it was determined that a Class 2 vehicle is not excluded from reconstructing motor vehicles and selling the same. I can read that as, we're talking about the same vehicle, we're not talking about using those parts as.
Doesn't say that, though. I mean, the omission is
It's not definitive the other way either.
Exactly. So they're asking you, although it's not within their jurisdiction, to come here.
jurisdiction?
It's not within the inspectional unit's jurisdiction to make this pitch to the licensing commissions about this particular thing. This is your jurisdiction, the governing of the licenses and the admission. So the pitch being made is if they can convince this board to scale back people's rights under their Class 2, well, then they might actually have a situation where there's less parts being sold to others. They have not stated one fact at this hearing, and this is a hearing about my client, not what Lawrence did, or not what people did in Lawrence, and whatever. They have not said that they made a finding that my client sold parts, that made a finding that my client runs a junkyard, or any factual basis that he's in violation of his Class 2. That's supported by the letter from MassDOT, says that what my client does, and has done for 30 years, the purchasing of salvage vehicles, the reconstruction of salvage vehicles, and the using of parts of salvage vehicles is totally within the law. Can he sell them? No. Can he keep junk cars? No. But no one's found or made a finding or made anything before this board, evidence that he's done that. That would be a violation of the law.
I'd like to ask the troopers.
No problem. I'd like to introduce Trooper Feldman.
No, you're troopers.
Oh, these ones,
Master
okay.
troopers.
All right. Well, when we're finished, here, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
So when you inspected the site, were there salvage cars on premises? Was there activity going on like that?
We have not actually inspected the site, sir. We took this paperwork from vehicles that were submitted by Mr. LaFauci with documentation for vehicles that he purchased that he was using for the reconstruction of another motor vehicle. So basically, he came in and produced a title. They have to prove where the vehicle, where the parts came from with an accompanying VIN number for any used parts that they have. So on the application, on the reverse side, he provided a title for a motor vehicle from which he stripped and took parts off of and reconstructed a second vehicle. So there was no site inspection done at Brothers Auto Body by the state police that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. Yes, any questions?
No, I have no other questions. I wanted to.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Sure, just to emphasize as far as Chapter 140, and I would concur with your finding that, or your opinion that the letter from Mr. DeSisto specifically speaks to his ability to reconstruct vehicles under the salvage title law. Certainly, he's been doing that for an extended period of time. That's not the case in point. If that was the case, why would we have a Class 3 license? That was the complaint that came from before, which is what brings us here today. At this point in time.
Great, thank you.
And also, those parts that are being taken off parts-only cars are being transferred to another car. Now, that other car is being offered for sale, so in essence, those parts are going back out to sale, if you look at it that angle.
Thank you.
Specifically, the parts are being taken by a car that could have been reconstructed, not a junk car that's a parts-only car, it becomes a parts-only car upon the dismantling, which my client has the right to do. I'd like to introduce former Trooper Feldman and Trooper Giles, and they have experience in this area, and they can shed some light on it.
Great, thank you. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
To the honorable body, my name is Richard Felton. After 27 years, retired from the Massachusetts State Police. 20 years was spent in the salvage title business. I was there from the conception when the legislature passed the bill and implemented it back in 1992. The salvage title was set up to curtail the theft of motor vehicles. It was originally part of the Auto Theft Task Force, was run by the Governor's Task Force, and we was succeeded from them because we need to be specialized in junkyards and where the parts was coming from. And to do that, they taken separated to two, and we came known as the salvage title section under the law of the Massachusetts governing body. And to do that, we had to initiate some plans and laws to find out if you have a salvage car and you have a second salvage car, that where was the parts coming from the repair car A, and the car B was the donor car. Now the donor car had to come up with 3 pieces of paper when they purchased it by any Class 2 dealer in the state of Massachusetts. And they had to come up with a title. They had to come up with an appraisal to outline the damage to that donor car. And 3 was, it had to come up with an insurance letter verifying all the history of the car. So that B donor car had all listed damage that was done to the car. And they was allowed to transfer the parts from that donor car to replace the B car damage with the A car damage. And that was a running record of what was taken off of one car to another car. And that way we went through the system. And anytime we had any complaints from anyone, the first thing was to do is go out and do an investigation on the body shop that we was looking at. That is, if this right here came in, it was Brothers Auto Body. We would go to Brothers Auto Body and says, okay, let's see your used car record book. Any and all cars come in, donor cars or salvage cars that could be repaired. And then you go back to the person that actually initiated a complaint. I listen to the troopers. I know them, they know me. And we found out that if another party's complaint, it might be beneficial to them. And I heard that from the other young lady that was just in here, that it was one person complaining because if they're allowed to buy 2 cars and replace one with the other, you're taking away some business from the junkyards. And if I want to get away with my competition, I bring someone in to take my competition away. And apparently that's what done happen now. And my record stands that I've been all over this state. I done worked just by every city in the state. And I have filed court records in just by every court in the state. And I done did the same thing that these troopers is doing investigation and find out. But it never made it to a point of being in a city licensing board meeting. We always went to the courts because we never found that we had a problem with a Class 2 dealer utilizing a donor's car, as long as they had the title and a letter from the insurance company clearly stating what was the damage that was done. So that way we couldn't use no stolen parts, because 90% of all cars made today have numbers. If you have your car, when you go to your car today, look for a number, open the door, and you find a number. Open your trunk, open your hood, look on your fender wells. There are numbers. So the industry tried to take and increase the greater possibility of recovering these cars. So that's why they took and put numbers on them. And that's why it says that a donor car can be tracked to any car that's been put out there on the road. And it's not just this state. I was federally trained by the FBI to do this job. So it's just not a Massachusetts thing. We were certified by the FBI, by what they call NICB, as National Insurance Crime Bureau, they also certified me. So it was a 20-year process of trying to make sure that the peoples of the Commonwealth was well protected, as also the businesses. And we try not to interfere with the Interstate Commerce Commission at the same time. That's why the FBI came in and trained us so we wouldn't interfere with their transporting to different states. And if any problem come up that we could not handle, that did deal with that, then the FBI came in and worked with us. So, it's a very strenuous process, and it went on for many years, and it's kind of complicated, very complicated. Because I remember when the law was first formed, and I used to go to court, they used to take and hold it over for 2 or 3 days so the court can find out what was best for what was going on, because it was a new law. And I see the confusion on most of your faces today saying, what is this all about?
Well, it's not so much that as council has provided us with a lot of detail. Unfortunately, it was provided to us 5 minutes before we came into this hearing. So we haven't had an opportunity to review it, and I'd like to see it in the context of the entire statute.
Yes.
Because the way I read that letter is, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. All I'm saying is my view of the interpretation is just different than your side at this point. I don't really hear any. I mean, I know a lot more about vehicles now than I did, half hour ago, but I don't think right now I'm in a position to be able to say, one way or another, which way I lean in terms of how the job is, or how the body shop is acting at this point. So, but I don't read it the same way your side does.
Okay, I think what it should have came in, either side should have came in. They have a form, what they call an application form and a request of application form for a salvage title. And they have a complete list. I don't know if the troopers have it with them, but they have a complete list, of breakdown of exactly what they need and how they go through the process. And every process is the exact same for every dealer out there.
I'm not questioning that. I
Every
guess
person.
what I am questioning is whether that applies to class 3 or class 2. I can see in his summary here that you could make a case for either class 2 or class 3, but I want to see it in the context of the
Okay,
of the
I
statute.
understand that. But like I said, as we goes back, I know someone says that they don't know how a auction works. See, that was part of the training that we had to go through. We had to go to the auction and see how the auction actually worked. Mm-hmm. And the auction states that everyone come through the door have to be a dealer, and they have to submit a dealer's license, a dealer application, a dealer's fee. Right. So that's the process that they have to go through. So when you buy them, so that means that when the auction is selling, they know who they are selling to. If it's even a class A dealer will buy an auction car if the value is right. If you're gonna come in with a high-end Porsche or a Lamborghini, they're gonna buy it, and they're gonna take and bring it here. I have dealt with Herb Chambers, a very high-end car that he had. It was shipped to Florida. Florida shipped it back. So it's a very complicated system. And just like you said, you don't have all the facts that you're looking at in front of you to make a decision. So, and that's the only thing I say is get all the facts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. I mean, Herb Chambers isn't Brothers Auto Body, so, there are differences between those two businesses,
yes.
So. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Counsel.
Mr. Chairman, if I could introduce former Trooper John.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Kevin Guy. I was in state police for 27 years, and I was in the salvage unit for 23 years. I'm not going to be as elaborate as the last two speakers. As Lieutenant knows, I'm not going to, notwithstanding the provisions set down by the registrar and amended by and all that, so I'm going to put this in layman's terms. Myself and Trooper Felton were at this unit at the beginning, and we spent 2 weeks in classes with insurance companies and the registrar. We were registry inspectors then, and then we consolidated in 1992 with the state police. So we were still registry inspectors when this came down. It was then that to put this program in motion, and it was under Registrar Hutchinson, that he came out with a memorandum that Class 1 and Class 2 dealers could purchase parts vehicles to be used to reconstruct salvage vehicles, and the vehicle was not to be resold, parts were not to be resold off of that vehicle, and after it was dismantled and used, they was to be junked. Okay, that doesn't supersede any local licensing board, of course, but that's it in a nutshell, and that was under Registrar Hutchinson. If you'd have to go in the archives to find that right now, because that was 23 years ago, and like I said, we were there in the beginning of it. And to answer your question, Class 1, 2, and 3 dealers can purchase vehicles at used car auctions and salvage auctions, and for salvage vehicles, repairables, and parts cars.
Well, that's why I'm a little confused. You go to an auction, and yet you're saying that a Class 2 license can buy junk. And if it's a junk car, it's marked junk. Why do they allow it to begin with? Why would,
You know, you're dealing with a lot of other states too, not just Massachusetts. You're dealing with buying cars out of Pennsylvania, Florida, wherever the bidding is worldwide now on the internet. It used to be, when we first started out, it was just local, but now it's all the states have auctions. You can bid on a car in Pennsylvania and have it shipped up here and as a repairable or a parts car.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, the facts as to my client don't establish a scintilla of evidence of him violating any law, let alone his Class 2 license. And I think that's the four corners of this particular hearing. If there may be an educational issue that the commission wants to involve itself with, or the troopers may want to involve itself with, but I can only represent one person with one set of facts, with one notice given by the commission. And the notice given by the commission was very specific. It, basically talked about the fact that, that my client was buying and purchasing salvage vehicles. I think the commission gets a real good indication that a salvage vehicle, we get the terms all messed up. Junk vehicle, salvage vehicle. I mean, I'm no expert by any means, but my understanding seems to be that a salvage vehicle, at least today, is a vehicle that can be reconstructed and remodeled with their appropriate parts, as opposed to a junk vehicle, which is maybe bones, dismantled, with no operational ability. My client, there's no evidence of Mr. LaFauci using the particular location as a junkyard. There's no evidence that establishes that he has junk vehicles there and he keeps them and stores them there, as a Class 3 license holder would do. There's no evidence that he sells parts. None of the things that you would have to find that he's violated his Class 2 license.
I don't think we're suggesting that at all. I think what we're saying, at least what I'm saying here, is that, based off the information that you gave us here today and what I heard from the Mass State Troopers, is that I still have a question as to whether Class 2 licensees have the ability to operate in that manner. And that's, to me, that's the issue.
Well, I think if I could narrow the issue, the manner for which you're talking about is because we know the Class 3 license holders can store junk cars.
Correct.
Okay, and that's what makes them so dramatically
Well,
not
that might be one. That
Okay,
might be
well,
one of
the other
issues.
thing they can do is they can sell parts, okay, which
That
a
may be
Class,
another.
right. So, and that's probably where they get most of their money anyway, again, aside. The reality is that in this particular case, the issue is narrow. And I'm not saying you have to make the decision now, or I'm asking you to make the decision now, that, that you have the right to your resources. I'm just saying, when you look at the four corners of the facts here, my client is buying salvage vehicles and has for 30 years. He is then taking one vehicle, cherry picking what he needs to make that one vehicle good, and the remaining vehicle gets junked in traditional fashion.
I mean, we're not here to make somebody's life difficult, especially when it's, it's their livelihood. But there are also, certain rules, and I just want to make sure that we're adhering to the rules, and I want to make sure that we understand them so that we make the right decisions on that. Like you said. Go
I
ahead.
think that, Commissioner, I think why we're here today is to see if he's violated his license. If there is any sanctions that should be brought against him today.
Well, I don't.
And I think then we need a ruling from our commission as to both sides, what we've heard, and how he can operate that business. Can he buy the salvage cars? Can he? I'm not in favor of a junkyard, absolutely not. But I'm just saying, I think today is, did he violate his Class 2 license? That's what I think we're voting on
I don't know if you
today.
can answer that question right now.
I say he didn't at this point, but I think, I'm just saying, for this hearing today, I don't think I would say there's a violation. I'm saying we need a clarification as to how he can use that Class 2 license. But to look at a violation today, I don't think so.
Well, I agree with you there. That's why I'm saying,
I think
I would rather just table it, be able to go back and look at.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
But
yeah,
I'm not
okay,
looking
so
for,
we're in
I'm not
agreement.
looking for
All right, I thought
violation
you were
today.
looking for a decision
No.
on that today.
I
I'm not
can't
prepared
make
to
a
do that.
decision. I can't either. I've found
And-
very interesting, and I did learn a lot today.
And last but
um,
not least, while you're weighing whether in fact he can buy a salvaged vehicles and use them the way that he has used them under the rubric of his Class 2 license. You also have to weigh the fact that that would mean that every auto body shop in this particular community would have to seek a Class 3 license, which is nearly impossible. However,
Well, I'm not sure if every auto body
Junkyards,
shop
I
has a
don't want.
Class 2. What's that?
Well, I would,
a substantial
I'm not
amount
in
of
favor
them
of
do.
issuing a junkyard license. Class 3 is what he's speaking. That, in other
That's
words, every other dealer that wants to repair cars would have to also have Class 3 to buy junk cars, which of course isn't something I think this board wants.
So you'd have this very unique situation. I'll refer back to zoning law.
But not all auto body shops have Class 2 licenses either,
A substantial amount of them do.
but not all of them.
Okay, so that brings the ones that do have them to your doorstep, asking.
So then theoretically, those same auto body shops would be operating in the same manner, and then my question is why aren't they?
Well, they probably are. I mean, I don't represent them all, but I can't imagine that they're buying parts, they're buying
So
parts
we could
retail.
do this all day. I guess what I want to do is, I want to be able to go back and look at the statute and make a decision based off that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to put that in the form of a motion.
I think someone else trying to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, are there any other, please,
Not all,
come on up.
not all
Sorry.
auto body shops do salvage vehicles,
Right.
just a select.
No, and I assume that that's the case.
Yeah, it's making it sound like every auto body shop has a Class 2 license and they're doing salvage
That's
vehicles.
right, and that was my point,
There aren't that many really that do it,
yeah.
a select few. Okay.
And I guess through the troopers, have we
you have-
found any others in the city that are buying salvage cars?
Yes, actually.
Class 2 licenses?
Excellent point. La Jolla Auto Sales has been coming in, and we ran into a similar situation where we advised him buying salvage vehicles for parts only, advise him that we will do the salvage inspection, however, he may be in violation of his license, which upon learning that, a lot of these used car dealers, what they do is they're in business, they know each other. He'll buy a car and give it to a Class 3 dealer, minus the parts, and get a receipt for the parts. Now, they're both operating under the guise of their licenses, so there's no violation
So
that we've
that's-
come across. Also, I want to point out, I've been in correspondence with the Attorney General's office. I believe is Ed Began. He's the senior attorney for consumer affairs, and I've had emails going back and forth. The way the statute stands, if you read the statute, to the best of my knowledge, or that I've come across thus far, there is no case law. So in lieu of lack of case law regarding the letter of the law, It's basically the interpretation of the reader of the law. But also that out of the municipalities we have dealt with in the last year and a half, the salvage title inspection, the Class 2 dealers that we've made aware of the violations are in compliance. This is the only outstanding issue we have, at least in the north team of the state on this. And that by allowing Class 2 dealers, that I understand it's a city issue, that if you grant the exception, once they take the parts off the car, that vehicle is now a junk car. Now, are they taking the parts off at their body shop? Because now you have a junk vehicle in the yard. So even though it's not, a junkyard, I know, it's all semantics a little bit, but just something to think about when you render a decision. You got all these Class 2 dealers and you open up that floodgate, that's something you may want to weigh on.
Great. Thank you. So I'll make a motion to table this just to be able to look at the regulations, and that way the commission could make a decision with all the information for us.
Right, I think it's just, I think this is a clarification meeting,
Exactly.
not a violation meeting, clarification, and we can get a ruling on that and see where we go from there. But certainly, we don't want to see a junkyard there. That's one thing
we're crystal clear about that.
Right,
All in favor, say aye.
aye.
All right, great, thank you. Thank you. Communication is a notice of appeal hearings from the Massachusetts Alcohol Beverage Control Commission regarding License Commission approval of the license of the application for Mahavir Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Convenient Market and Deli. The hearing date is set for Tuesday, January 31st, 2017 at 10 a.m. I also want to note that the commission is looking into the events that took place at the Squire and waiting for additional information from the police department before we set a hearing.
Okay.
Any other items?
I think at this time, through the commission, if they would like to call into Mario's Brothers, I notice he has a Class 2 license. He does have a Class 2 license for one car only. And I noticed that one car was designated for one spot, and he's got them piled up coming around the corner now. And also, he has vehicles up on lifts by this one license he has. And I would just like to ask why these are up on those pedestals there. It seems like a dangerous thing to be doing at that location. So I would like to call him in and just ask what's going on there and how many cars he actually is selling there. Because I know his license only is for one.
Okay, so let's send a letter out to Mario's Auto Body and have him appear at the next meeting. Any other business? Next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 17th. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second to that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.